Sometimes all it takes is one fiery quote to throw a decades-long partnership on ice. And that's exactly what we're digging into today, a major trade dispute between the US and India, kicked off by accusations of a one-sided disaster. We're going to look at the data, the diplomacy, and try to figure out what's really going on here.
Yeah, not a lot of room for interpretation there, right? This statement from former President Donald Trump is really what lit the fuse on this whole thing. But is it just tough talk, or is there a specific case being made? Let's deconstruct it.
All right, so let's break this down. What's actually behind this one-sided disaster claim? Well, the argument really boils down to a few key complaints.
So, according to the post on Truth Social, the argument has like 4 main pillars. First, there's this accusation that India has these incredibly high tariffs, basically building a wall around its market. Second, and this follows directly, is that American businesses just can't get in to sell their products. Third, we shift to geopolitics. The claim that India is choosing Russia for critical stuff like oil and military gear. And the final point kind of wraps it all up, that it's a one-way street where the US gets very little back. It's a really powerful accusation of an unfair deal.
Okay, but this is where the plot really thickens. When you take Trump's claim that we sell them very little and you put it right next to the fact that the US is the largest export market for India, well, it looks like a flat-out contradiction. So how can both of these things be true? It's all about perspective. While India sells a ton to the US, the American complaint is all about the trade deficit and the barriers that stop America from selling back. And that's the real tension at the heart of this dispute.
So you gotta ask, why now? Why this timing? Well, these comments didn't just appear out of nowhere. They landed right after a pretty major international summit that definitely caught Washington's eye.
And that meeting was the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, or SCO Summit in China. And really, what went down there is crucial for understanding the pressure that came right after.
The source article we're looking at described the scene as a rare display of camaraderie. And those warm handshakes, the smiles between the leaders of India, China, and Russia, yeah, that wasn't just for the cameras. It was sending a huge geopolitical message straight back to the West.
And this quote from China's Xi Jinping to India's Prime Minister Modi, it just perfectly sums up that message. When he talks about the dragon and the elephant, he's making a very direct, very public appeal for these two huge regional powers to align. It's basically him extending an olive branch in the middle of all this global change.
So, this big diplomatic shift, it did not go unnoticed. And the response from the US, well, it wasn't just words. It was economic, and man, was it fast. I mean, the US response was a textbook case of economic escalation. Check this out. Over just 3 weeks in August, things moved at lightning speed. It kicked off with a 25% reciprocal tariff. A few days later, bam, another 25% ad valorem duty gets tacked on. That's a tax based on the value of the products. And that was all leading up to this massive hike planned for the end of the month. And here's the final number, 50%. 50! Let's be really clear here. This is not some minor trade tweak. A 50% tariff is basically an economic cannon aimed right at the heart of India's export economy. We're talking industries like textiles, gems, and machinery that employ millions of people. The message could not have been clearer.
And alongside that economic pressure, the language got a lot sharper too. U.S. Senior Advisor Peter Navarro made this really pointed accusation. He claimed India's deal for Russian oil was just lining the pockets of the Brahmins, referring to India's traditional elite or upper caste, at the expense of the regular population. It was a deliberately provocative thing to say, adding a whole other layer to the dispute.
So, when you step back and look at the whole picture, you've got the accusations flying, the new friendships with Russia and China, and this full-on tariff war. What you're seeing is a relationship that is under some serious, serious pressure. This wasn't just a small squabble. It was a test of a key strategic partnership from every possible angle.
So, let's just recap those pressure points real quick. It all started with words, right? Accusations of an unfair trade deal. Then it moved to optics, India getting cozy with Russia and China. And finally, it turned into action, this incredibly fast tariff escalation. It was like a perfect storm, hitting this partnership on the trade, diplomatic, and economic fronts, all at the same time.
And all of this leaves us with the big question, doesn't it? With all this economic and diplomatic heat rising, what happens next? How does this critical partnership between the world's two biggest democracies move forward? It's a huge question with massive stakes, and right now, the only sure thing is, well, nothing's for sure.